Tonight we have a really special guest. I first met Jay when he and I were both in Sweden, and he was telling me about what he did, and I was a little bit jet lagged, but I knew it sounded important. He gave me his 2 books. I think at least you've written 2. And I read them on the plane home, and they were fantastic. And then when a group of students and I went to Americana Music Fest in Nashville, we went and visited Jay at his office at DigSin. And he spoke with us for about an hour and totally blew everyone away. And so I'm really happy to have him here today. Please give a hand for Jay Frake.
In order to have a hit today, you have to grab the listeners in 7 seconds, or the chances that your song will be a hit decreases exponentially. Now, I'm not saying that just because it's a good opening line and it's a good thing to get this happening, but this is a true fact based on everything that is happening in popular music today. If you do not grab the listener in 7 seconds, the chances that your song will be a hit decrease exponentially. Now, it's important to do that because when you think about what's going on right now in the world, there is just way too much going on. And you think about all of the media that you're consuming, whether it's going to be YouTube videos, whether it's going to be games, whether it's going to be movies, whether it's going to be interactions with your friends, you realize that you make snap judgments about just about everything in your lives, including music. And when you look at the data, uniformly across the board, you have 7 seconds to engage that person. And a lot of you probably look to yourselves and probably think that 7 seconds might actually be too much, but overall, that's what it takes for the average person. When you actually compare this to how music used to be discovered, it's really kind of interesting because, you know, back in the days of radio, when radio dominated everything, it was real easy. All you had to do was just get your song onto a radio station playlist, and that song would go on the air, and through that, you would be able to go and have constant repeated impressions at various particular points. Basically, you didn't have nearly as many distractions as you have nowadays, and you had all of this opportunity to be able to get somebody to get into the song at multiple different touch points. But now when you're doing it, now all of a sudden there's way too many distractions, it's way too difficult, and it becomes exponentially harder. And so you have to use every tactic that you can if you're going to create a song to make sure that it succeeds in the marketplace. Now, to give you an example of exactly how competitive this is, you don't just have to look around the room. Let me give you some hard stats. If any one of you in this room were to listen to every single song that was released this week, and all you did was listen to those songs for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it is physically possible for you to only hear 5% of recorded music. Let me state this again. If all you did was listen to music, you didn't play games, you didn't socialize, you didn't spend time in class, all you did was listen to music, it's physically possible for you to only hear 5% of the music that comes out in any given week. This also, by the way, presumes you don't listen to anything that was released prior to this week. It also presumes that you're also going to be not listening to songs over and over again, which of course is completely unrealistic. And naturally, what ends up happening out of that is that after this week, the next week, there's another batch of songs that you can only hear 5% of. And the week after that is another 5%, and all the stuff that happened before that starts falling by the wayside. And basically, all of a sudden, now you start to get the feeling of why it's very, very difficult for your music to penetrate out there. The record industry as a whole right now is busy focusing on the fact that they say, well, it's about the fact that streaming music doesn't pay us. People are stealing the music. It's all wrong. The problem is there's too much music out there and you have to compete to get heard. That is the one hurdle that every single person in this room, whether you're going to be on the record label side, whether you're going to be on the creative side, it doesn't matter. The hurdle is you have to figure out how to get your music heard, because the reality is that with so much music coming out, how are you going to be able to get somebody to remember your song week after week? It's too hyper-competitive. On top of that, it's like every single time you go to try to promote your music, You're competing against a million other things. I've worked with plenty of artists on my record label where I get really excited. Ooh, I got a big publication, a big blog, and they're going to go and premiere my music video. And it's fantastic for about an hour. And then an hour later, they premiere somebody else's music video. And an hour later, they premiere somebody else's music video. And then all of a sudden, before you know it, I'm way down on the page, let alone how I'm going to show up in their social feeds. The competition out there is intense. Everything that you guys have learned about the fact that you don't need record labels anymore is helpful because you can all play the game. Everybody in this room can play the game. The problem is the game is a heck of a lot harder than it was even a decade ago. So there's certain things, though, about a song and the creativity of a song that haven't changed at all. One of them is that it still takes 5 to 7 listens of a song in order for that song to be something that you remember, something that you can sing along to, something that if I'm going to go and say the name of that song, you'll absolutely know what song I'm talking about and you'll be able to sing along. 5 to 7 listens. The human brain hasn't changed that much. That's what it takes for your song to get remembered. Now, it used to be that getting somebody to hear the song once was really difficult, because you had to go and convince some radio station that you had to play the record. And they basically told most people no. But if they said yes, that song got played over and over and over again, which then, of course, meant that that song got multiple impressions and got to those 5 to 7 listens easily. Now, one listen is the easiest part. Everybody in this room, if I told you about a band that's on my record label, everybody in this room could go and immediately know where they could go to go and listen to that song. Whether they were going to stream it, whether they were going to buy it, whether they're going to steal it. It doesn't matter. Everybody in this room knows exactly where to go to hear that song and listen to that song once. But what's it going to take for me to get you to listen to that song again? Remember, there's 5% that you can only physically hear. Your brain is constantly bombarding you with the new. There's too much other new stuff out there. If I don't get you to listen to that song and think that that song is amazing, what's going to get you to listen to that song again? The reality is almost nothing, because you make up your mind, and you make up your mind fast. And most people make up their mind as to whether or not they even think they're going to like that song in the first 10 seconds of the listening of that song. So your hurdle is going to be saying, how can I actually get my song to be heard multiple times? What can I do to be able to make sure that my song is going to be heard over and over again? Because that's what causes a song to make money. Why do so many musicians come up to me and say, Jay, I want my song in a commercial? Part of it is because commercials pay money. But the other part of it is that how many places do you know actually get a song in front of people multiple times? There's not that many anymore, and TV commercials are one of the more reliable ways. So remember, getting that second listen is paramount to your ability to make a song successful. So what happened? I mean, the internet was supposed to be all this great big thing. I mean, you guys grew up with the internet, and it's supposed to have all this infinite possibilities. I can get all the music I want. I can listen to everything that I want. I've got it all at my fingertips. This is fantastic. What happened? What happened is access happened. And access, all of the things that make your life easier for music, makes every musician and person in the music business's life a living hell. But it's not about the money part of it. It's about the part that there's just way too much competition because everybody can dive in. Used to be a really, really easy equation. It showed up on the stereo. You heard it first on your radio. Shows up on television. Something perks up your ears. What happened? Pretty easy discovery process of how it used to be. Nowadays, though, of course, here's the other part. It's all diffused. You know, everybody in this room will not necessarily have the same answer on how they discover music. Everybody's discovering it in a different way. There is no unifying point. Going back to that point about me being on a music blog. Great, I'm on that music blog. If I mentioned that music blog, I'd be shocked if 5% of the room raised their hand to say that they read that blog daily. If I went and I said it on even some of the bigger sites, YouTube, Spotify, what's to say that you're going to hear it that day? What's to say it's going to be in your feed that day? What's to say that your friends are going to be talking about it that day? Not much. I guarantee you that any new act that anybody in this room is going to be promote would be hard-pressed to actually have 10% of this room be aware that that even came out in a 7-day period. You'd have to really work hard, or your song has to be the best song ever. That's why the best song ever is what wins. That's why every little trick you need to do to get people into your song is crucial. So, but the interesting thing, though, is as I was doing all this research, which I started doing about a decade ago now at Yahoo Music, back when Yahoo Music was actually ruling the digital space, one of the things that I found was that there was a new commonality that was going on. And that's the reality that whether or not you hear a song on Spotify for the first time, whether or not somebody shares a YouTube link with you for the first time, whether or not you're on Pandora and the song shows up, whether or not it's coming up on a music blog, it's coming up on Shuffle because somebody threw it in there, somebody sends it to you on the phone. Here's the interesting thing. Music discovery now has a common point. It used to not have a common point because people would come into the radio multiple different times. People would go, and when they shared music, sometimes they would go over to somebody's house. Sometimes people would discover songs because they'd hear it in the supermarket. The reality, though, is that right now, all of these things, every single one of them has something very, very key in common. And that's the reality that every single play, every single one, starts at 0 seconds. Now, you don't necessarily think about this. You guys have grown up in the digital world. I can actually talk to you guys understanding this. But you have to understand that as a concept, this is relatively new to the music business. The concept that people in the music discovery process are all, not some, not most, all, going to discover a song from the very beginning of that song. This is brand new because this now allows every creator in this room the opportunity to recognize, well, if I'm going to get somebody to come into my music, I've got a focal point. I talk to and counsel a lot of artists. And they'll go in and say, oh, Jay, I got this really, really killer chorus. I'll be like, fantastic. Nobody's heard it. What do you mean nobody heard it? Well, your intro sucked. What do you mean? Well, so what? So they're going to stick around for the chorus, right? Nope. They don't. Data shows that they don't. I worked with a major act about 10 years ago, and they made a music video. And they were really excited because, well, I'll tell you the story. The band The Strokes did a video, and they had David Cross in the beginning of the video as a DJ. And they thought that they were really, really excited about this. Man, we got David Cross. Everybody's going to want to see David Cross. So they put him in the video. 45 seconds, beginning of the video, David Cross telling jokes as a DJ. It's The Strokes. Strokes were hot at that time. Everything was great. I said, fantastic. How much did you spend on the video? A couple $100,000? Fantastic. Half the people who were intending to listen to the song didn't hear one note. Why? Because they hated David Cross. And the reality is that all those money that they went to try to get people to buy records and see the band and listen to the song, half of those people didn't hear a note. Why? The intro stunk. That's how important the intro of the song is. That's how important the first 7 seconds are of a song. The other reason why you've got to engage people is because right now everything that you're doing for the music listening experience, almost all of it is coming with distractions that is designed to get you away from the song you're listening to. If I go in and convince you to listen to one of my artists on my record label, my next level of competition is that the song is so good that your eyes don't wander somewhere else. So you're on the Spotify page and you're listening to my song on Spotify. Fantastic. Well, then, oh, look at all that. Oh, look at what my friend's listening to. Oh, wait, that's a cool song. Oh, I love that song. Let me go check that out. And boom, you're away from my song. And the minute you're away from my song, I lose. YouTube. Oh, you're busy watching the YouTube video. Oh, all of a sudden, no, this part of the video I don't like. Boom. Okay, what else are they recommending to me? Boom, I'm away. Here's a little trick. One of the things that's very, very important in the way your mind works is when you do positive things, you get positive reinforcement. When you do negative things, you do negative reinforcement. Every single one of you, when you are listening to a song and you go and leave that song before it finishes, you are telling your brain, I don't like this song. Your brain remembers that. Your brain remembers that you made a negative action during that song and is going to then say, when you're out at a party, hey, what'd you think of Jay's new band that he was talking about at this talk here at Loyola? That was all right. Negative reaction. You're going to have a negative reaction if you're going to go and skip out of the song. And that's what will happen with every single one of your songs if you cause somebody to leave it, if you give them an excuse to leave it, because it's not just about the song itself, it's about everything else that's going on around that song. That's how crucial it is to keep people engaged. But the interesting part is, from the stats, when you look at all that data, about half the people only hear 10 seconds of your song. Think about this in terms of how you deal with all the music and all the stuff that you go into. How many songs do you actually listen to a meaningful portion of the song? Really, I mean, be honest with yourself, right? If it's half, it's probably generous. Most people really do that. It's about half. About half of the people will only hear 10 seconds of the song. But the most important thing is remembering it's the first 10 seconds of the song. First impressions are really just that. You have to nail somebody right at the beginning. The unique part about this is that if you want to have that opportunity for your song to go and actually go the distance, you've got to get past those first 10 seconds. Because that's the one common denominator that you have to be able to go and figure out, can I make my song successful? Can I get it out there in a bigger way into the world? Now let's look at this data, which I know is hard to see from the back, but you just bear with me. This is the average length of the intros in #1 pop songs from 1955 until today. And the reality is that technology, believe it or not, has always had an impact on whether or not a song would become a hit. Back here in the late 50s and the early 60s, at the dawn of the pop era, you basically had about 5 or 6 second intros. Why? They played music on 45s. Why? That was the most acceptable format. And guess what? A 45 at the time barely held 3 minutes of music. You had 3 minutes to get your point across. Technological limitations meant that you didn't have much time to deliver a song. Led Zeppelin physically could not write Stairway to Heaven in 1959 because they could not release it. Then all of a sudden, you start to see that the average length of the song intros grows, commensurate with the rise of the LP. Conveniently enough, as Led Zeppelin had the ability, because all of a sudden the LP, which moved in the late 50s from being a thing for Broadway shows and classical music and moved into the pop world, all of a sudden you had artists starting to challenge things, and through that they also challenged the length of what an acceptable intro can be. So every musician in this room, by the way, who thinks that every song has to have a standard 8-bar or 16-bar intro, instrumental, to get into the groove of the song, that's not the way songs used to be. Songs used to be, you gave a chord and you went. You go back into the 1800s and 1900s when you had sheet music, the piano player would play one chord to get everybody in tune and they'd start singing. Intros are not naturally supposed to be these long 16, 18-second intros. They just became this way because technology allowed the ability to have this longer period of time. It peaked here in the late 80s with the rise of the cassette, because the cassette provided even more opportunities. Vinyl, you had 20 minutes per side at max. Cassette, you could have 45 minutes per side. Well, great. That means I can make the song any length I want. Held steady in the 90s, and then boom, 2000s hit, and it drops. This is a pretty standard, predictable pattern across decades here. This is not. The disruptive pattern here is the internet. The disruptive pattern was Napster. The disruptive pattern was what you guys have grown up listening to music being about. The disruptive pattern is the fact that digital music and digital discovery and digital listening has changed the way people listen to music and changed the expectations of what people want out of music. Again, technologically, singles, DJs, all of this stuff. This was the technological limitations of the past. This was the technological reasons for songs existing the way that they've been. Technology dictates consumption. I'd love to tell you that it's all bound in your creativity. And your creativity obviously has an important factor on it, but you have to recognize technology's role in everything you do because it plays a crucial role to go from the instrument that you're playing, to the studio you're recording it in, to the person on the other end who's actually going to engage in your music that is going to give you the opportunity to make money in the future. And if you're not able to connect with those people, no matter how great your song is, it doesn't matter. We have a saying around my office where we've got the Grammys coming up. And it's no secret that the Grammys are the biggest night in the music business, the most successful night in the music business. but the Grammys do not play Tuesdays at 1 in the afternoon. Why? We're all too busy. We all got a million things going on. If they had the Grammys Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, a third of the people would watch the show. Why do they do it Sunday at 8? Because they know that that's when it's best going to be watched and received. Your music is the same way. If you don't play into the way people are going to hear and receive your music, your chances that your music will be hits reduce exponentially. Skip ahead a little bit here. This is a little bit tough to read for those of you in the back, but just to kind of emphasize the point, I took the current top 25 songs on Spotify, and I basically went through and said, how long is the intro to all of the most streamed songs on Spotify? Now, first off, I know there's a couple of people in this room, because there always are, that basically say, well, Jay, I know this song, and this song doesn't have a 7-second intro, and that song is really, really successful. Yes, there are always exceptions to the rule. This week happens to be one of them. The number one song right now is A Great Big World, and the intro is 17 seconds. Congratulations, you got me. There's exceptions to every single rule. But you look through the whole of this, and you're basically seeing, when you look at this, One Republic, 0 seconds. Lord, 0 seconds. Katy Perry, 5 seconds. Anybody want to guess what the average of the top 25 songs is? The average length of the intro of the top 25 songs is 7.3 seconds. I've been doing this presentation for several years now. I've had to redo this chart and variations of this chart for every single talk that I do to keep it current, and it never wavers more than a couple of tenths of seconds. Never. The other thing that never wavers is the amount of songs that have absolutely no intro. Right now, nearly one-third, 32% of this list has 0 intro. Goes right into vocals. 32%. And this number is always, since I've been doing this, been between 25 and 35%, always. On this list, one of the most successful new artists right now is Lorde. How exactly does a 16-year-old from New Zealand, who's quite good, but what's the extra factor? What's the other X factor that's going to get her to be this successful? Lorde is the only artist on here who has 3 songs in the top 25 most streamed Spotify songs in the US. Those songs are, I'll back up here. Those songs are here, Royals, 0 seconds, intro. Team, 0 second intro. Tennis Court, 0 second intro. Sense a pattern? Seven seconds. Remember, this is so key. That's why I hammer this home, is that if there's any part of the song that you're going to think about when it comes to marketing the song, when it comes about creating the song, spend time getting this right. Because here's the other interesting part. Once you get the person past 7 seconds, they're highly likely to be hooked for the whole song. The reality is that we're so distracted with so many things going on right now that once you actually get somebody past 7 seconds, then a lot of other things start to kick in for them that basically says, I want to give this a shot. Pay attention the next time you actually decide when do you go and leave a song. You'll find, like most people, in most instances, you'll either make that decision up front in the first few seconds, or you're going to wait through at least a verse and a chorus, if not a second verse and a second chorus, and you're not unique. The data shows that basically once you get past those first 7 seconds, the overwhelming majority of the people stick around to listen to at least a large chunk of the song. If there's another point that people are likely to leave the song, it's after the second chorus. I usually call that's basically the mixtape mentality. So many people are used to listening to mixtapes that they basically get through 2 minutes of a song and they go verse, chorus, and they really don't have too much energy to stick around for the rest of the song unless they feel the song is going to be offering them something new. One of the other reasons why, as many of you know, that bridge after the second chorus is crucial to be changing things up, because if you've got to keep the listener interested in your song, you've got to keep them interested, and that point is a key point in the song, not just because songwriters who are experienced will tell you, but the data will also tell you that. And the good news is, once you get them that, and you listen to the whole song, they're going to give that song a second listen. Remember what I told you about the negative connotation if you're going to skip the song, if you're going to go skip to another piece of content? Remember what I told you about that? Well, of course, the opposite will be true if you actually keep the person in for the whole song. If they listen to the entirety of a song, then guess what? There's a positive connotation. There's a positive reaction to that song. And all of a sudden, they now actually have something that says to them, you know what, this song is good. Why? Because I didn't listen to the whole of all these other songs, but this song was something that I actually wanted to listen to till the very end. It actually creates a positive connotation that highly increases that likelihood to get to the second listen. And sometimes the second listen is just hearing that song again, but sometimes it's because, oh, look, I listened to it on Spotify, and now it's, oh, here's a music video. Let me go watch the music video. Oh, here's a new version of the song. Let me go watch the new version, listen to the new version of the song. You're getting the repeat listens once you've established that positive connection, once you've established the positive connotation. And the multiple versions of the song, I can't underline how important it is to do that. Because again, we're so used to knowing that we can only listen to 5% of the stuff that comes out, that we have to train ourselves to go and constantly make something that's old feel new again. So if somebody comes in and says, all right, well, I watched the lyric video and now I watch the official video, and then I'm going to watch the video where somebody's going to sing to it, and I'm going to watch the remix video, and I'm going to watch the acoustic version, on and on and on and on. The reality is that you're tricking people into listening to the song multiple times so that they can remember it. But you've got to be able to engage people in multiple ways to do it. They're not just going to go and accept, as so many people as I do see on social media, going and saying, hey man, go listen to my song again. Hey, go watch my video again. They don't care. You don't care. You all know this from your friends. You don't care. But if at the same time they said, hey, I made a new video, now I care. Now this is something that's interesting. Hey, here's somebody who did a cover of my video. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Now I care. You've got to keep things fresh because everybody wants to be thinking new. Everybody wants to be thinking what's hot, what's fresh. Because who's got the time? Here's the other thing. What's important to recognize is that you guys are all in school together. I'm sure a lot of you are in groups together. You're probably in recording projects together. You're probably in marketing projects together. But the reality is that every single person that you're looking at around the room, keep a good eye on that because they're your competition. Every single person here is who you're competing against, not necessarily from a dollars and cents perspective, but from a time perspective. Because no matter what, the listening experience is finite. You only have a certain amount of time to actually get somebody to engage in listening. If you were listening to music on your phone on your way over here, the minute that you entered this room and saw your friend, you turned off your music. Your music experience ended. It had a finite period of time. And this happens with everybody. You're traveling from one place to another in your car. You're going to go and you're basically doing your schoolwork before you go out for the evening. You're heading out to the office. You're heading out for the evening. You have a finite period of time. So let's assume, just to kind of give you an example to really put this in perspective, let's assume that you actually have 1 hour. You don't consciously realize this, but you have this. You have 1 hour to listen to music. Now, in the average listening, if you say that there's an average 4-minute song, that means that you have the opportunity to listen to 15 songs. That's all you got. You got 15 songs that you're going to be able to listen to. If, on the one hand, I have one of those songs that people wanted to skip, guess what? Song number 16 just got heard. If your song was song number 16 and mine was song number 3 that got skipped, I lose, you win. If, on the other hand, my song was great and that person listened and stayed tuned, my song wins and your song never gets heard. Whether that's coming from a playlist, whether that's coming from a recommendation, you have to realize the more that you can get somebody wrapped up in your song, the more that you can make your song something that is sticky and not something that people are going to jump out of, the more that you are not only reinforcing your song, but you are keeping your competition songs out. That wasn't a big deal when there was only 2 or 3 new songs that got added to a radio station every single week. But when there's now tens of thousands of songs added to Spotify every single day, Now all of a sudden you realize how important it is to make sure that you not only make sure your song gets heard, but make sure that it becomes something so that you don't let the other guys get songs heard. Because if you're able to do that, then you're never going to get to it because the listening experience is finite. The other reason is because of something that I call ARF, which is the average royalty per hour. The reality is that I'm not going to ignore the fact about streaming payments, and I'm not going to ignore the fact about about how it's going to take to make money. It's your job to make sure that you make a larger chunk of that dollar, whether it's going to be a larger chunk from what Spotify is going to pay you, whether it's a larger chunk of what Pandora will pay you, YouTube, doesn't matter. As we're moving to a world very rapidly where 95% of your income is probably going to come from streaming in 7 years, which you guys are fully aware of, it's going to become more incumbent upon you to make sure that you're spending more and more time with your song and not with somebody else's. Don't look at play counts. Think about how much of the person's time I am taking up. And the more that you can do that, the more that money will come to you versus going to somebody else. And it's basically a calculation by average royalty per hour. Here's the other reason why, is because the way things are set up right now, these services are set up to pay based on how many times somebody listens to a song for the most part. So if somebody is listening to your song in 10 seconds versus listening to the entire 4 minutes, and the service, like Pandora, has to pay the same amount, well, what do you think they're going to favor? They're going to favor the 4-minute song because it's cheaper for them. I mean, the crazy thing right now is that it's a variable cost. Anybody who knows anything about business knows that variable costs suck. You can't run a business not knowing what you're going to spend on your goods that week. You have to actually know what you're going to do. So services like Pandora and to some degree Spotify are going to have to actually do a better job of wrangling in costs. And one of the ways that they're going to do it is they're going to be looking at basically figuring out what songs cost us the least. And what songs are going to cost them the least are the songs that people listen to the most of, because that means that they are doing two things right. One is that they are giving the person the best listening experience, and two is going to be that they are also making sure that they are giving people the cheapest music for them. If you have the opportunity to make sure that you're getting more of your song heard, that means that not only is more money ending up in your pocket, but many of these services might actually save a little bit of dollars. Hence, they are incentivized to do that. I don't know how many of you have ever listened to Pandora and gone on one of the stations and gone, why the hell are they playing this live version of the song? Pandora seems to have a propensity to always like to play live versions. I don't know why, except until I put it against this, when the live version's 5 minutes versus the studio version that's 3. I mean, the reality for them is that Stairway to Heaven at 6.5 minutes is a safe bet that if they're going to serve that for somebody, they're going to like it. And Stairway to Heaven costs Pandora the same as 3 random punk rock songs. Own the listening experience. It's absolutely crucial to your success. It's absolutely crucial to making sure that the music that you create and work with is going to succeed. And to do that, you have to engage that person up front, and you have to make sure that once you do, you have enough things to keep them engaged over and over and over again. But that first one, if you're not getting them over that hump of that intro to the song to make sure that people are going to listen to that song in full, then you're not even getting out of the starting gate. And all of the effort that you put into the creation and marketing of your music will be for naught. Now, I can talk a lot more. As Elliot said, I've written a couple of books. I have them available for sale here if you're interested in it. But I want to make sure that I have time here to answer your questions. We can talk about song creation. We can talk about digital marketing. As Elliot said, I have my own digital record company, and we also have a digital marketing company where we get hired by many platinum artists, concert promotion companies, etc. So I want to make sure that I have time to answer any and all of your questions about digital music. So with that, I don't know how you want to, do you have a microphone? You want my microphone? So there's a question. We'll just start right up. Oh, right there.
Regarding YouTube videos with pre-roll ads, do you find that pre-roll ad takes away from that 7 seconds, or the few pennies you make off the pre-roll ad is worth it?
I personally think that I think that you should be monetizing every experience where you can. And one of the things which you can see, taking out the Miley Cyruses of the world, Vivo is actually a really good experiment because Vivo went from the ability to skip the ad after 5 seconds to forcing you to watch the entirety of the 30-second ads. And if you actually watch and look, on average, Vivo videos stream less than YouTube videos. And I think part of the reason for that, and certainly this is from data that I saw 10 years ago, and I don't think viewer behaviors changed that much, is that when forced to watch an entire commercial, there's actually a lot of people who will actually not even give the song a chance. So, so there is the potential for distraction for some people from that. But I think in that point in the discovery process that to some degree, yes, it's taking a couple of dollars off the table is probably better in the long run of getting people exposed to the music. But I don't feel so strongly about it to say that that's something that you absolutely have to do. I do know that I recommend most artists don't use Vivo, even though they pay better, they don't give you access to data, and you have that ad restriction. So unless you're a star artist or Vivo's going to give you a lot of promotion, I say just stick with YouTube because you'll get more views that way. Next question.
So thanks for coming. I'm more interested in recording music than writing. Like personally, I don't write music very often, but like for the people who I work with, I would hope that what they're thinking about when they're writing the song is just writing whatever they think is the best song, not necessarily is this going to be top 30 on Spotify or whatever the list is going to be. Maybe that's the wrong way to do it. I don't know. But like, I guess what would you say about the approach to writing music? Because this is all great from a marketing standpoint, but I don't know, it doesn't get me excited about thinking about writing music, for example.
Well, the answer there is that I even say this up front in my book. I mean, one of my favorite bands is Radiohead. And I basically said, if Radiohead read my book and decided to follow it, I'd shoot myself. So I think in general, you have to make a decision. Are you doing the music for art or for commerce? And if you're doing the music for art, then forget all this and do your muse and follow your way. If you're doing the music for commerce, on the other hand, then you need to at least pay attention to this. Most of the time when I've talked to major record companies and producers about what we talk about in the book, most people actually take the approach of saying, let me go write the song the way I normally would. Let me go and actually be creative and make the song as I feel it. And then once I kind of get the rough outline of what the song is, once I get the real feel of what this song is all about, then I go and say, can I tweak the song and can I improve it by all the things that I talk about? Can I take this stuff and make it the extra 10% to go the extra mile? So, and you know, I've known some big producers who basically take all this stuff and from the get-go write a song with all of these elements in mind. And I know some people who take that approach who just kind of tweak it afterwards. And to your point, some people who never listen to it. There is no right or wrong way. The one thing that I do know is that this transcends genres. This is not just a pop music thing. A few years ago, I had a conversation with a guy named Ólafur Arnalds, who's from Iceland, very amazing musician. And Ólafur told me a story. He's, by the way, an avant-garde classical artist, about as far from this as you possibly can get. And he told me that he actually, to my surprise, had read my book. And he said it was amazing because in a pre-release of his albums, he released 2 songs. One song was what he viewed in that genre as being his more commercial song, but it actually had a long intro. The other song was much more experimental and a much more personal work to him, but had no intro. And the song with no intro outstreamed and out-downloaded the more commercial song by a significant margin. So even in that world, he went more creative. And this is a world that shouldn't care 2 shits about what the heck is going to be going on in the commercial world, and yet the exact same principles had a significant impact on his songs and which songs became popular. Next question. I don't know where the microphone went to. Back there.
What do you find is the most influential digital marketing tool? Is it like social media, Google Ads, or some other technique?
I think every artist and every campaign needs to follow data heavily, and that basically means that there's not one size fits all. Some people can actually do an extensive campaign solely through Facebook, and some people, if they can spend all their time on Facebook, can get absolutely no effort, nothing for it whatsoever. I think everything has to be something where you have to try things, and you have to try as many of them as possible, and then gauge the output for it. I think the key thing to think about is don't try to get to everybody. Figure out who your 1% is and go after them, because pretty much universally, most artists, you're not going to get much more than 1% of your potential audience. So the best thing that you can do is say, I think this is where my audience is at. Listen to your audience to see if that's exactly where it's at, and then figure out how to best market to them. Sometimes it's buying advertisements, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just about making connections. I mean, I think a lot of people, it's like we say, I've got a band right now, and we're finding that people that like churches really like this band. So guess what? I go to blog writers specifically who've written positive things about churches. It takes my field from going about thousands of music blog writers to finding 50 or 60 that actually might think positively about my band. Makes it efficient for my staff and my time, and it also increases the likelihood that I'm actually going to have a positive impact. So you have to take each one with a grain of salt, but and test them. But the most important thing is try things and learn from those mistakes, and don't repeat those mistakes no matter which platform you end up using. Where did I see the microphone? Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So 7.3 seconds. Do you see that number getting smaller with the increasing number of musicians, and maybe with the increasing number of people who know that 7 is the magic number, and then all of a sudden people know that, or every song that people listen to has 7 seconds, but then someone comes out with a 6-second intro, and then all of a sudden 6 is the average because 7's just like too long. Do you see the intro just eliminating itself? Or?
Well, I don't see it necessarily completely eliminating itself. And as I said, I mean, I've been doing this for several years, and the intro average has pretty much tracked consistent, and it hasn't wavered that much since I've been talking about this. The one thing that has changed is to that point of eliminating the intro. The percentage of songs that have had 0 intro have gone from about 5 or 10% when I first started looking at this now to that roughly 30% range. So the number of songs that have absolutely no intro has definitively increased. But that being said, there is always the exceptions to the rule. There is always, to the point made earlier about creativity, there's always going to be that fantastic song that has a 29-second intro, but is just such an amazing song, everybody has to talk about it. Fantastic. My rule of thumb usually is that if you're going to have a 29-second intro, then the song better be the best song you've ever heard. And if it is, and in the case right now, that's happening with the Passenger song, Let Her Go, then you actually have the ability to succeed. But to my rule of thumb, it's the longer the intro is, the better the song better be. But I really don't think that we're going to see too much differentiation in the average length of songs, just because I think that balance will maintain itself. Next question over here. Yeah.
In what ways, promoting your music online, are you able to actually gain a fan base and have it grow, but without being too annoying and spam-like?
How do you grow a fan base without being annoying? You're going to annoy somebody, so accept it. Start there. And that somebody is probably going to be your friend, so accept that too. The biggest thing that you have to do is you have to change up the messaging. You have to change up what you think about. Think about, big marketers that are constantly, every couple of months, changing the creative on their commercials that you might see on TV. The reality is that you have to constantly make things fresh. So the thing that you can do most to annoy somebody is basically create an ad or create a Facebook post and basically have, for all intents and purposes, the exact same post and same ad running over and over again for 6 months to a year. That's going to be a definitive backfire annoyance. That being said, the hurdle that you have is it takes, just to give you an idea of the length of time, it takes major labels at least 1.5 to 2 years to break a single from a new artist. So a major label with all the resources and all the money that they have, it takes them at least a year and a half before they break. And my advice to all of you is realizing if it takes them a year and a half, it's only going to take every single one of you longer. And so the trick of what you have to do is not only do you have to take a song and zero in on that song, because again, when I mentioned about the major label, it's not about it takes a year and a half to break an artist, it takes a year and a half to break the song by the artist. What you have to learn how to do is you have to say, how do I keep making this fresh? How do I keep all of those people who came on board in the first week and keep them excited about it when it's a year and a half later? And that's by basically shifting up the message, offering up new versions, offering up people just different things to be talking about, just different ways to talk about. Your fans want to know when you have little glimmers of success, and that becomes new information. So just keep things fresh. And by doing that, then you'll minimize the amount of people that you'll upset. But you're guaranteed to be upsetting somebody, so you just got to let that roll off of you. Yeah, next question.
So,
Okay.
do you suggest, or have you ever worked with maybe multiple versions of one song, like a radio mix of a song, and then, the album mix, and then maybe the video is a little different? Like, for example, Jay-Z's song with Justin Timberlake, in the videos, it was completely rearranged. And would you suggest that, or is that something that?
Absolutely. I mean, but I'd suggest that you have to do different things for different people. Certainly, we're running a song right now where we're doing a remix contest for the song on Indaba. And we've got something like 120, 130 different remixes from around the world on this competition. And the thing about that is that that's now giving all these people the opportunity to now go and listen through multiple versions of the song, and I don't even have to do anything. And so and we're seeing that because since we started running that contest, the iTunes sales are up, and the Spotify numbers are up, and the YouTube numbers are up for the original version of the song. So, but there's going to be plenty of other artists where doing a remix of your song makes absolutely no sense because of the song that it is. So you just have to come up with different things. There's another artist that I'm working on, and she has a very soft piano ballad that went to #1 in the UK last year. And remixes would never work for her. But she has something where basically there's always, at least once a week, somebody is putting up a YouTube video of them singing that song. So she promotes the fans promoting the song for her. And that enables it to be a different version in a completely different way. Yeah.
How much would you say the success of an artist or band has to do with online presence as opposed to like gigging and touring and face-to-face stuff?
Well, the interesting thing is that when you hear people in the music business talk about how the record company model is broken, what they really mean is that, if you think about a model, think about like, somebody putting together a model ship in a bottle kind of thing. The model basically means that there's instructions on how to put things the right way, and there's one way to put that model together for it to be successful. And the problem of the model being broken is that there is no one way to success. Success used to be in the music business very, very easy. I record the song, I give it to a radio guy, he plays it on the radio, we ship the music to record stores, millions of people buy the record. That was it. There was no, and when we tour behind it. That was it. That was the whole model. And now there are plenty of artists who never tour who are successful. There are plenty of artists who tour and have no digital presence. They're successful. Adele has almost no digital presence, and she has had the best-selling record in the last 5 years. There are plenty of people that lightly use digital and are still focused on a lot of radio, and they sell. There is no one-size-fits-all. You have to see what's going to work well for you. I think the key, though, is that you have to pick where you're going to succeed and focus at it. Don't say I'm going to be successful at touring and then tour 3 days a month. Don't be saying I'm going to be successful at social media and post every 4th day. If you're going to be successful at it, you've got to give 1,000%. You've got to go and say, I'm going to be out on the road 28 days out of 30. You got to say, I'm going to be posting every single free moment that I can to let people know about my life on social media. You've got to say, I'm going to be committing to finding people and growing it on Spotify. I'm going to be updating my playlists every single day. Find your niche and commit to it. There's a kid that I know on YouTube in England that we talk all the time. His name is Alex Day. This guy makes, decent music. but it's not music that's going to get on radio. Yet this guy got a top 5 song in the UK with no radio. How the heck did he get a top 5 song in the UK? By the way, he gets millions of views on YouTube. It's basically because he committed to YouTube. He posts on YouTube all the time. He communicates and comments on fans' comments all the time. And when the time came to say, I need you to buy my single so I can make the chart without a record company, hundreds of thousands of fans did, and he charted in the UK. But he made a commitment to YouTube. You go and look at what his presence is on Facebook, it sucks. You go and look at what his presence is on Twitter, it's not that great. But he committed to YouTube, and he sticks with that, and he's been able to make a successful career. So the reality is, pick the lane that works best for you as an artist and give it 1,000%. And that's going to exponentially increase your chances on the marketing side. Where are we at question-wise? I think we've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Is there other quick questions? Okay. Well, and I just really quickly, again, I do have copies of my book for sale in the back. I will be back there if anybody is interested. Thank you all so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.